Hello there, local JB here. So right now I want to talk about these new specific Lucian buffs. So it does actually receive 3 seconds less cooldown on his E early on. Now just to be clear, just because of these buffs it doesn't mean that you're gonna E max, you're still gonna Q max, and later on it's gonna have the same amount of cooldown. But what do these buffs allow him to do, and why are these buffs even great? He becomes more of a lane bully. So you can actually initiate in many ways a fight as Lucian, right? Depending on the scenario, but right now your E becomes, the cooldown of your E becomes more matching to the cooldown of your Q. You're gonna see what I'm talking about. For example, say you engage in this way, let's say you Q in, right? The cooldown is more matching. We can see the cooldown is more matching, and because the cooldown is more matching, on the next rotation of my E, my Q gonna be up as well. If you initiate with Q, maybe you bounce a Q of a minion. Now, arguably, you won't always Q initiate, right? That's fine. That can happen. That you want to, let's say, you W or even so, you use your E as a initiating tool, right? Look, for example, I W initiate, right? Now, as much as possible, it still, to some degree, is matching, but you're gonna have 2 seconds off. So you still can actually get an E off when you have 2 seconds off on your Q, and your E will come up by the time you swing off those 2 basic attacks and move a tiny bit forward to get a Q off. But say if you don't even like W engage, you just completely E engage, right? Then what's gonna happen is very simple. Like, if you do this combo, right, depending on the situation, then again, there are gonna be more seconds of differences. So ideally, as much as possible, you should aim to Q initiate to match the cooldowns. Now, okay, we talked a lot about this. Let's move a teensy bit on. So, when it comes to Lucian, one thing to point out is that he lost some degree of his pressure once Nami and Lucian weren't such a broken combo anymore. And that's what Riot Games says, that he's less of a lane bully because there are many lane bullies in these days. People believe in picking other lane bullies such as Ziggs bot lane and so on. He even got nerfed, of course. And so I actually brought up multiple fandoms. Right? For example, there are some champions that do have powerful abilities such as Tristana, but they have long cooldowns. For example, we can visually see Tristana's Q has 20 seconds cooldown. Rocket Jump has 22 seconds cooldown. Now that our E costs it has only 19 second cooldown, we can outpace their abilities, right? Which means that a scenario, 3 seconds of extra zoning, right? More zoning than before. Or you get an all-in potential if they are disrespecting your E. So A scenario, they're gonna give up CS, B scenario, they're gonna get all-in, and more than often people won't be used to the new Lucian E cooldown, so this will be a bit cheesy at the new patch, which we will have to get used to, so you're gonna get some cheesy kills because of the E cooldown is reduced. But also the other notable feature, but Gaby, don't you reduce the cooldown anyways, even if your E has 22 seconds, like don't you reduce the cooldown of your E ability anyways with your passive, right? Now here's the thing, you do it, but what if you use your E defensively? Then you don't, in some case scenario, right? Now, in some case scenario you get to basic attack at least once back, right? Depends on the situation, but even so, that's the thing. Here's the thing, like, even so you would like to get off your basic attacks, you would reduce your E's cooldown, right? But the cooldown wasn't matching as much to your Q as before, which means you could E in earlier, but you wouldn't have your Q up by the time at level 4, if it makes sense. So E without Q has way less threat, if it makes sense, right? While from the other hand, I brought up some other things such as Samira. Now, even before, your E always had more, less cooldown than her W or her E, but now you have actually way more threat into Samira because you have your E way more frequently up, right? It had 22 cooldown, now it has 19 base cooldown, which you're gonna further more reduce. So you have actually a lot more space to force an all-in on into her before her W or E comes up. So you're gonna have more threat in this type of matchups, right? Once they give up their abilities. Now, Nyla, another really good example. Her E reach dash time is 26 seconds. If she gives up 2 of her E's, of course, W 26 cooldown, which generally means we can put way more pressure on the table as before. And the other notable feature, I also brought up things like Azrael, of course. Azrael has a long cooldown on his E, but if he doesn't have it, then you can oppress him quite easily if you have a support to, of course, engage with you. Now, I brought up some other supports as well that could be played possibly. We can even type Nami, right? Nami lol. It doesn't matter too much, you know, like anything that has synergy, Nautilus, what have you, I can type Nautilus. Like it's not so much about the champion in here. It's just all about you understanding and you unlocking right now some new thinking patterns. Like Nautilus, this is like LL triggers one of the most favorite champions, right? And as they change the cooldown, right? So for example, as we already know, it has 19 seconds cooldown. Sometimes you have to W preemptively, so you won't always get an empowered shot of W. But let's say we do this at this, right? 9 seconds cooldown. Now 9 seconds cooldown, before it used to be having a different cooldown, right? And we can see that it becomes more matching to your ally champions either a engage cooldown, which means that as soon as your ally champion has his engaging tool up, you can engage as well. Now, this may not apply specifically to Nautilus because at a similar time his hook gonna be up, but for example, I do believe to Leona it should apply. May not be the best example. Some of the supports, see here he has 12 second cooldown, right? Now, generally they're gonna max after WE, so it will be easier to have a faster matching dash to your supports engage if that does make sense, right? While notably against, it's not only with, even against those type of champions, because it's easier to play defensively into a Nautilus Leona if you have way faster your E up, so it's sort of a defensive tool as well into champions such as Thresh. Having your E up way faster is a big deal, because before your E had a 22 seconds cooldown. Let's say hypothetically you give it up defensively against this hook. You don't want to challenge him, right? You just E out completely out of it. You're gonna have the same cooldown, so he doesn't have like a 3-second window to zone you off of CS. So yeah, they will have less space as well to sort of zone you off, if it makes sense, right? It's not only about you having actually more oppression, so this is quite a flexible buff. And as I said, as another good example, Nami, her E of course has only, how many seconds? 11 seconds cooldown, right? And it, like again, your kit becomes a bit more matching to that cooldown itself. Say we get these off, right? We reduce our E's cooldown quite nicely. So you'll have actually up way easier on the same rotation, your E up as she has her E, right? Now, one of the notable things, the same way as she has her Q up, of course. So you're gonna have a smoother all-in window with your supports, if it makes sense, with your enchanters, right? With your generic enchanters, which will allow you to go for smoother all-ins. So this is a bit, I complicated a little bit. I know I complicated a bit for you guys, but I just really wanted to understand you guys the impact of those 3 seconds. And I even summarize it really easily. You either zone for 3 more seconds, so it means they will have difficulties to CS, or you get an all-in potential, or again, C scenario, you get way more safety. Because they will have less threat, like it is like something that's like really life-threatening, you got a E away. You're generally gonna have your E up faster, so they don't like they don't mess you up, right, with like a trash hook or something. So that's it for now, guys. Now it does provide the DPS buff as well. I mean, I could also say that you're gonna have a bit more DPS because you have it up a bit more frequently, of course, and perhaps you even more so be able to actually take down a plate from the tower as before, if it makes sense. Or perhaps you could also like aim to like disengage more smoothly after clearing a wave because it resets from a jungle gank, right? So this has a bit more in depth, right? This has a little bit more in depth, but generally speaking, we kind of like got the point. I don't wanna like too much complicate a simple 3. I don't wanna complicate too much a simple 3 second buff, right? So that's it for now, guys. Have a nice day. Oh, I could just press F11, but